There's one big issue people have with fat loss. They chase very fast results and take unrealistic, not sustainable methods to get there. This is when they'll see yo-yo-like dieting where they'll see some results but struggle to maintain those results and end up putting the weight back on, then repeating the cycle. Plus, they'll also get very confused about how fat loss works, trying very different methods and strategies. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to drop your first 5 kilograms of body fat in a good, short space of time in an easy, straightforward manner. Meaning, once you've seen this initial fat loss, you can sustain it and then continue with further fat loss if needed. But first, before I take you through those simple steps you're going to take to drop your first 5 kilograms of body fat, let us break down fat loss really quickly. You've probably tried loads of different approaches to dropping body fat. Potentially removing certain food items or groups from your diet, maybe trying to fast for certain periods of time. The list can go on. And you've probably seen some level of success with it, but struggle to maintain it. Here's why. Fat loss occurs due to a calorie deficit. A calorie deficit being taking in less calories than you are expending. So when you remove certain food items or food groups, you're reducing the amount of calories you're taking in. When you fast and have less time to eat in the day, you're reducing the amount of calories you're taking in. So it isn't the particular food items that you're removing or the method that you're using that is causing fat loss to occur directly. It's just that it's potentially aiding in reducing your calories and putting you into a calorie deficit. But when you can't sustain those methods, you can't sustain your calorie deficit, so you can't sustain the results you're getting. So let's discuss some simple steps we can take to create this calorie deficit, lose 5 kilograms of body fat, but also use methods that we can sustain. So these steps are all going to be about controlling our overall food intake, getting consistency with that, and potentially slightly reducing those calories to help put us into a calorie deficit. The first step, meal timing. Now, the exact times you eat don't really matter. You'll hear people say you can't eat after 8 p.m., for example, and that's complete nonsense. Instead, I just want you to focus on being consistent with the times that you do eat for meals and or snacks. And what this does is it allows us to be very consistent with the amount of food we take in day to day and week to week, because now we're only eating at set times and the calories outside of those set times are now going to be reduced. Very important again for creating a calorie deficit. The second step is portion consistency. This is a similar thought process to the first step. I want you to get very good at keeping your portion sizes consistent for protein, for carbs, and for fats from each meal or snack. So for example, every time you eat, I want your protein to be the size of an open hand. Maybe your carbs the size of a closed fist, and maybe your fat's the size of an OK sign between your thumb and finger. Again, this just allows us to be very consistent with the amount of food we're taking in, and it also makes it very easy to then make adjustments later down the line if we need to, because for example, we could just say, okay, in certain meals, we're going to reduce our carbs by half if we need to reduce calories. Step 3 is we're going to identify what foods we have in the house that are high calories and low in volume. So these are foods that are typically very high in calories, but don't really fill us up when we eat them, and therefore we feel like we can just eat a lot of them and the calories can really start to stack up. A great example of these might just be something like sweets. Now, we're not going to completely remove these, but we are going to slightly reduce the amount of them we're consuming. We don't want to completely eliminate them because flexibility is important within your diet. What we're going to do instead is then replace some of that reduction with an increase in foods that are now lower in calories but higher in volume. So again, on the flip side, these are foods that you just struggle to probably eat a lot of, but at the same time, they're actually not too calorie dense. Now, a great example is something like vegetables. Now, this will help us reduce our calories because we're taking higher calorie dense foods, reducing them a little bit, and replacing them with lower calorie foods, but it will also help with hunger management. And if we can control our hunger, chances are we're going to be able to keep calories a little bit lower. Step 4, rather than thinking about taking away food, think about adding food, but in particular, protein and veg and fruit. Now, we already spoke about the sort of portion sizes we want to aim for protein, so if you're not hitting that, aim for that, and make sure you're having protein in every feeding window. But I also want you to make sure you're having 1 to 2 servings of veg and or fruit, let's say the size of a closed fist, in every feeding window too. Step 5, the final step, daily activity. So we're not thinking exercise here, more thinking steps that you do day to day or standing rather than sitting. And there's no magical number when it comes to steps. You've probably heard the number 10,000 thrown around a lot, but for a lot of people that's actually just unrealistic. So instead what you're going to do is look at where your steps are right now, and we're going to try and increase them by 1 to 2,000 each day. This will help us bump up our expenditure across the week and help us create a calorie deficit. And again, it should also be a realistic number that you can stick to and be consistent with. There you have it, 5 simple steps that will help you drop 5 kilograms of body fat in no time. These should also be pretty realistic changes that you can stick to and be consistent with, which will then also help you maintain your results afterwards. Now, if you did find this video helpful, please do drop a like because it helps me. If you have any questions, comments or thoughts, drop them down below. And if you haven't already, do subscribe so you can keep up to date with future videos that are going to help you in your fat loss. I'll see you on the next one.